Hello to everyone. This is Pop Chat. I'm Annette Tarpley, and today I have Paul Bernard Calvert with us, and he is a writer and does lots of different things. I'm really interested, Paul, in you sharing with everyone your what you do, and where you live, that type of thing. So if you could share with us some stuff about Paul, that would be wonderful.
Great. Well, I'm Paul Calvert, and I'm living here in Bethlehem in the Holy Land. So I'm about 5 minutes away from where Jesus was born, right here in Bethlehem. And I've lived here in the Holy Land for about 20 years. And it's a very, very interesting place to live. There's always something going on. And I came as a volunteer originally here to the land of Israel, working on a church project in Jerusalem doing renovation work. And from then, I got involved in radio because I've always had a heart and a love for radio. And that's led me into journalism. So I became a journalist basically. And I have a press pass now, which gives me the opportunity to stay here in the land for much longer. And I get to go and interview amazing people from the Israeli point of view, from the Palestinian point of view. And then I get to go to special press events where people are coming from other countries. So been able to see Donald Trump when he came in 2016, 2017. Joe Biden just recently when he came, Prince Charles, Prince William, all these sort of famous people get to see them and take some photographs. So it's a really privileged job that I feel that I'm doing and a very exciting job as well.
Wow, that's very cool. And here you are, you interview or you see these wonderful, amazing people, and you're sitting here with me today. So how
Yeah,
humbled I am. So, I came across you a while back, and you do a lot of videos with your poetry, and I'm always amused by the poetry that you do and the pieces that you do. I mean, they're very good. I always love watching your videos. And so, the most of the stuff that you post, is it in, as far as your works, is it in video format?
basically, yes. I only really started doing it just recently, about 3 years ago. So it was when the pandemic was on. I left Israel to go to England because I'm from England originally. And as soon as I got to my city, basically the whole country shut down. So I was in my brother's house all on my own. And I just wanted to write a poem, particularly about the heroes of the National Health Service. So I'd done that. And then I started thinking, well, I want to do more. So I thought, let's try and do one every week. So we've been doing one every week and been doing really, really well at it. But I have been doing it before. I've actually written a book a long time ago. I entered a competition once for local radio, BBC local radio, and you had to do about life in the area where I lived. Now, there used to be a pig called the Cumberland pig, which has become extinct. So I thought I'd write a humorous little story about the Cumberland pig and how he became extinct, which he actually didn't in the story, and it won the competition. So from that,
Wow.
I wrote two more episodes to have it as like a trilogy, and then I lost the two episodes. I can't remember what happened to them. And then
Oh.
19 years later, I decided to write this as a book, and I went all out and all the time I was writing. So I wrote it as a book. So each chapter is uh, there's 8 chapters per story,
Uh,
and there's 8 stories, and it's a little bit like James Bond type bad guy, good guy thing. So I was
wow.
yes, I've done that and wrote it as a book, published it myself, and sold it myself. But done it as a bit of fun, really. And you can tell how fun it is because I didn't get the spell check on, so there's a lot of spelling mistakes in it.
That's funny. Yeah, that is very amusing. I'll have to. So is that a book that's on like Amazon? Is it on
It's
Amazon?
not. It's only available really through me. I go back to England. I speak in churches about the work that I do here, and then usually have a little table at the back selling product from the Holy Land, and also put one or two bits and pieces of my stuff on. So I've written a couple of books. So I've been selling a couple of books and things like that. So I
So in
am.
order for me to get a copy, I've got to go to England when you go back to England.
Pardon? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Oh, I really wish I would have gotten a piece of your one of your videos actually, because I'm going to have you share your poetry. If you have a minute, you might be able to actually uh, text me. Maybe the links are on YouTube. Are they on YouTube?
They're on Rumble,
Oh, I don't know if I
so
can
I can
download it or not.
take this one actually.
Um, I wasn't thinking ahead of time, and I should have
Um,
done that. Um, but we have some comments. We have some people
you can go
here.
to download.
I wonder if you can email
Yeah,
me a file or something. Do
I've
you think
just
you can
sent you
email me
the
a
link
file?
on Facebook.
I'm going to share.
Um,
There's a private chat that I'll share my email address. If you can do it, you can do it. If you can't, you can't. But I wasn't thinking ahead of
yeah,
time. Shame on
yeah.
me. But so you wrote one book, and so you do. So you really didn't really start writing much until like 3 years ago. Is that correct?
Well, I was before I left school, I started getting into writing. So I was actually writing a lot of comedy things. So I would write a lot of comedy, send it to the BBC, and see if I could get something on. And it never really got anywhere. And I always wanted to get involved in radio, and it never really got anywhere. And it was only when came to the Holy Land that it actually started to develop. And there's so many people to interview here. There's so many stories and things like that. So I must have done about 800 or 900 different radio interviews here in the land about the land of Israel and the difficulties and the
Did you say
political
eight to
situation and
nine
everything. So
hundred? Did you
yeah,
say
something
eight to
like eight or
nine
nine
hundred?
hundred shows I must have made.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
amazing.
it's a lot.
Yeah, because I've noticed sometimes when I watch your videos, there's a little bit of humor or satire to it,
Yeah,
and I think that that's what really is appealing to me.
I love comedy.
I have some friends, in the UK who tease me all the time about American humor. They don't apparently don't find it funny, but so so I just kind of I but I appreciate all humors, and of course, like the Brits, are great humorists. Usually more dry, I think, in humor than
Well,
we are.
I have a huge collection of British comedy, particularly radio comedy from the 1950s, 1960s,
Wow.
1980s. So I've got DVDs and I've got radio comedy. So I've always loved all that sort of sense of humor. And yeah, so I think the British have made some good stuff. And that's why I wanted to write. But when I was writing when I was about 18, I didn't know anything, didn't understand anything. And what I would love to do now is sit down and write now because I'm many, many years older and I understand a little bit more about comedy. When you look
Yeah.
at comedy, you look, for instance, the TV show Frasier.
Right.
The TV show Frasier works well because it's opposites. You got two
Yeah.
brothers who are very posh, and you got a father who's not, and he's
Right.
very common. That is how comedy works. And I watched Friends one day, and I saw the storyline was about a switch, and they didn't know what this switch done, so they sort of took the house apart. I thought that was very good comedy. You just put a comedy situation on one little tiny thing. So I love comedy and the makings of comedy and how things can be funny and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of well, of course, I love a lot of British movies and so forth that the Brits do, but I think that there is comedy and laughing is just such a healing thing. And I think when we laugh, it's just this wonderful uh, thing that happens, and it's healing. And
I
so, yeah, you should.
I do every day.
You laugh every day. I think you're frozen.
I watch two for reason because of
You're breaking up.
healing. After a chance to get in, having
Yeah, I can't.
taking
So you're
seeing that as
breaking
really
up.
really important.
Oh, there. I hear you now. you said is really, really important. I think you said you did something every day, and you disappeared on me. So I'm going to actually start
Yeah,
posting some comments. Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I can hear you now too. We have some comments. I'm going to remind the people who are watching that unless you have changed your settings to identify yourself, we don't know who you are. You're simply a Facebook user. So please, after you comment, sign your name so we know who you are. And so we have somebody that says, "That's awesome, congratulations." And oh, another one like that also, and that is from Pravash Chandra Saha. And so thank you. And then we have a wow from someone and another awesome. And we have good morning from Black Widow from Tennessee. And so that is actually Gina Carrillo, who has been on this show before. She's actually a spoken word artist, very dynamic. So, hi, Gina. And we have a message from Jill, who is from the UK. She's one of my
Nice.
admin on the Passion of Poetry. Hey, Jill. And she interviewed me once for this, so that was interesting. So then we have warm greetings from Nepal. So, and then we have, do you like Billy Connolly? I love him so much. Do you know who that is?
I know who he is, but I've never really watched anything from Billy Connolly. My family never watched it, so I never watched it. So I know who he is, but
But
I
yeah,
don't really know his humor.
well,
Yeah, but
apparently Jill
I
likes him.
yeah,
Apparently Jill likes him. Then we have no, he has gone. Oh, I think she's talking about you. And then we have now I meant. Not sure what you mean, Jill. But anyway, Jill's been on vacation for like a couple of uh, weeks, some kind of beachy, lovely, warm place. So she's been sending us all kinds of pictures. I think she sent me a picture of her drink last night. You know, Sex on the Beach.
yeah,
That's the name of the drink.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I know.
so anyway, she's having fun wherever she is. So, um, do you feel like writing is a gift, or do you feel like it's something that is learned?
Um, I think a sense of both. I think it is a gift, but I think sometimes I rush things that I write, and it's like, no, settle down, wait, think about it. So what I like to do is I like to write something and then come back to it maybe on another day. So for instance, last night I was in bed in the middle of the night and I sort of wrote a poem which has a twist to the end of it. It's not finished. I couldn't even read it now, but then I will come back to it in the next day or two, and I will start writing it and putting it all together. And I try to think about things. So if I'm doing a subject about my cat, I will try to think about everything that's to do with the cat. You know, his paws, this, his tail, and what they like to do, what they don't like to do, and use that as the information to put my poem together.
Oh,
Sometimes I can just sit there and within 5 minutes I've written a really great poem. You know, so
yeah,
there's a sense that it can be a real gift, and I always keep mine to about a minute long because I think we live in a generation that don't want to stay anything on anything for longer than a minute. I go on Instagram and I'm flicking up and
yeah,
I'm looking at these things, and I
yeah,
can get into some things. Oh, this is taking more than a minute, and I will flip over and go to something else as well. So that's
yeah.
why I try to keep all my poems to around about a minute.
Yeah, mine
Um,
are probably a little bit longer than a minute, but I keep them fairly short. I'm kind
yeah,
of like you. If I start and somebody posts something, a poem, and it's very lengthy, my mind shuts off, and I'm pretty much out of there
yeah.
mentally too. So I agree with that. So it sounds
Well,
like you kind of mull over your work a little bit. You start
sometimes,
writing it, come back, refine it, and so do ideas like can you get ideas for your poetry and your writing from anything? Can you look at
yeah,
something and you can? So
yeah. Well, sort of what I wanted to do with my poetry was it was life at 50. So I turned 50 just recently. So it's about all the issues and all the funny things that sort of tend to happen at life at 50.
Yeah.
And I also have a cat. I have about 20 cats. Well, I did. I got
Wow.
about seven. I got about seven now. A lot of them died. But I've got a cat that likes to open my fridge. So that makes a poem.
I love that. Your cat opens
You
the
know, about the
fridge.
cats that
Wow.
like the fridge,
That-
and just
That's amazing. You know, the cat probably
just
opens the
looking
fridge in
around
the
the
middle of the
house
night.
and seeing things that you do. Well, I've got a chair against it at the moment. She knows when there's chicken in the fridge, so that makes a good poem. So it's sort of things that happen in your life at 50. You know, so for instance, you go to the bathroom every 5 minutes. Well, that makes a good comedy sketch. You know,
Does.
trying to get to sleep, I have problems sleeping sometimes because I have a thyroid problem. So that's it. And then I have sciatica in my back. So that, well, that makes a poem about trying to get out of bed. You know, one that I've just been posting recently was, "What day is it today?" So it's like you're trying to remember what day is it. The other day I
Right.
went on my phone to write something, and as I opened my phone, I couldn't remember what I was doing. So things like that. Oh, there's a poem about that. You go into a room and why am I here? What am I doing? So all these things that seem to happen to you when you're around about 50, and
Well,
I think that's why
I have
sometimes
an
people like
epiphany for
my
you.
poems because they can relate to it.
Yeah, I have an epiphany for you, and that is another 10 years when you're 60, you'll have a
Yeah.
whole new set of issues. So
Well, that
yeah,
gives me a whole lot
decade,
more worth
huh?
of poems to do.
Yeah,
So I try to write things like that. I do one or two spiritual ones as well. Being a Christian and been living here in the Holy Land. So
right.
I like to do something that's a little bit Christian, with maybe just a little bit of a message or something like that,
Yeah.
because many people go through difficulties as well at times.
I think
And
I
then just
saw one. Did you post one? You could have posted something this year, but it seems like maybe it was last year that you posted one that was religious based and maybe about Christmas time is Christmas time. Do you
yeah,
remember that?
I posted about three or four during Christmas. So every week I would do a different Christmas one. So I done one about Mary and what she went through, being told that she was pregnant and how people would have treated her. Another one about Joseph, who suddenly I found out my wife is pregnant. What's going on? And then the shepherds in the fields. I'd done one about the shepherds in the fields because we live very close to the shepherds fields here, so you can go and visit the shepherds fields here. And
Do you have a living in that atmosphere? Because I think that would be so cool just to visit it, but you actually live there day in and day out. So when you live there, do you take for granted the meaning of the setting, or do you feel it every day?
I think you can take it for granted a little bit, but at the same time, it can be an awesome privilege. So
Yeah.
Thursday, I went to Jerusalem, and it's like, wow, I just went to Jerusalem on Thursday. Oh, I'm going to go down to Jericho. I'm going to go down to Bethlehem. And, all these places that are in the Bible, and suddenly you're living there and going there. And last year, just for Easter, I stood on near the mountain where Gethsemane is. So I had
Oh,
the building of Gethsemane in the background, and I read my poem to camera with Gethsemane in the background because that's where it all took place. So
yeah.
it's so awesome that you can be there
That is
in
very
any location.
cool.
Yeah.
Gethsemane reminds me when I was growing up, and every year we'd go to the Coliseum, and I went to a kind of at the time was going to a parochial school, Lutheran school, and we always sang "Go to Dark Gethsemane." I don't know if you know that song. Go to dark Gethsemane. And I'm not a singer. I'm a very
Yeah.
bad singer. So, but that's what Gethsemane reminds me of is that song.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Do you want? Why don't you share something with us?
Well,
Do you want
I
to?
picked up two poems sharing. Um, one is it's called JFK, a poem. So I have a real fascination with John F. Kennedy, with his assassination. So I thought I need to write a poem about it because I love the story about it and love everything about it, and I've seen all the movies, all the documentaries that there are about it. So I thought, well, I need to write my own poem as well. So I'll read this out now. So give it a go. So it was an autumn day in Dallas in 1963. Something tragic happened that everybody did see. Someone had a gun with bullets loaded inside. In a book depository they did hide. The open car drove down Elm Street, a president inside. John and Jackie Kennedy up above the assassin spied. A cine camera was rolling, which caught this historic event. Bang, bang, bang. 3 bullets were spent. And there in the car, the president had been shot. 3 bullets. He'd taken the lot. The breaking news came on the TV. It filled everyone with fear and dread. Our president, John F. Kennedy, is dead. Who was the real assassin? Did Oswald commit this crime? We never got an answer, even with the passing of time. And now movies are made, and you can have your say. Who shot the president on that fateful day?
Wow, that's amazing. That's interesting.
So
That was, yeah, such a tragic time. And
it's a fascination to me because I wasn't born when this happened. So,
yeah,
looking back and watching all the movies, and I've watched documentaries about, was it really one person? Was it 2 people? Could they shoot it off that fast?
or
Who
was
was,
there a conspiracy? They
yeah,
had all kinds of kind of conspiracy theories as well.
yeah, who was J. Harvey Oswald? And all these sort of
So,
things.
what do you think? What is your personal opinion?
Well, I thought they'd just released some paperwork saying the CIA had just done it. I thought just recently some paperwork had been
Oh,
released in America blaming the CIA. Um,
wow. And why did they mention why the CIA would have been wanting to rid him?
I can't remember. I can't remember. I think he was wanting to do something. Maybe he was wanting to shake up the CIA or something about it. I really can't remember. But yeah,
Yeah,
so we don't know. I don't think we'll ever know.
yeah,
Um, a tragedy for America and a tragedy for the world.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I've
Yeah,
watched a lot
I
of.
guess I feel like everybody said, like he's a great president and stuff, but I don't think he was in office long enough for us to really judge, his presidency because he was kind of snuffed out a
Yeah.
very short period of time after he got into office.
And because he had a
So,
bad back, I read that because he had a bad back, it gave him a lot of pain. So when he went into meetings with Khrushchev, Khrushchev saw him as a weak leader, and it was because he was in pain. So so other
mm,
nations were seeing him as a weak leader just because he was in pain. So
yeah,
interesting. Yeah,
that's interesting because actually, Roosevelt, um, what also had like handicaps and so forth.
yeah,
So, I wonder how they saw him because I
yeah.
think he had polio or something. I don't know. Look, at I'm from America and I'm probably getting it all wrong. So my history lessons probably aren't the best. Um,
I've always loved America. I think I watched too much Baywatch when I was a kid.
well, yeah, America is not Baywatch-ish really.
Yeah.
Um, so have you ever been to the U.S.?
I have. I lived in Miami for about 4 or 5 months when I
Wow.
went to do a youth project for a church organization called Youth with a Mission. So it was like a training program. So I went to do that in Miami, and then I went to work in Canada as a children's pastor in a church. So that was
Wow.
for 2 years. We were very close to the American sort of way of life in Canada as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you always had that in you as far as being a missionary and serving and working in that as far as studying the word or whatever that you do? Has that always been a part of your life?
Well, we always sort of went to church. I used to when we used to have 2 churches, my dad's church and my mum's church. And my
Oh,
mum's church was in town, and my dad's church, the little chapel, was local. And when we went into town, it meant you got back home late. And I used to like watching to get back home to watch Heart to Heart on television. So I
oh,
always liked it with more the local chapel. And then, and it was a bit of a failing church in town. And then a new pastor came along called Brian Grist, and he totally revolutionized it and totally changed it. He made it more modern, and he preached a gospel message. People were coming every week, and lots of people were coming into our church, and he would bring guest speakers and things like that. And that's really when I sort of got a heart and passion for the work. And my mum started coming to church more often because we went to church about once a month. And then when he came, my mum started going every week. So I would go with her. And then, of course, he started a youth group. So I got involved in the youth group as well. And from that, and just sort of the passion grew. And I always told my dad, I'm going to come and work on the farm. But as I got to secondary school, I realized I don't want to work on the farm, but I could never tell my dad I don't want to. So,
So were both of your parents ministers then?
no, just regular everyday guys.
Oh, so when
Uh,
you're saying that they were going to church, they were part of
yeah,
the parishioners, but they
yeah,
were going to separate churches,
yeah.
right?
Now, my grandfather was a preacher who I
Oh,
never met, but he was a Methodist preacher. Um, so yeah, it came to a point where my dad asked me, "Do you want to carry on with the farm?" And I said no. And then I left, and I eventually went to work at a book warehouse in my city, which is actually a missions organization sending Christian books around the world. So I went to work there for about 3 or 4 years, and then I got this opportunity to go to Miami, came back and went to work at the book warehouse. And then an evangelist came to our church, and he liked what I was saying one day. So he sort of picked me up. And he used to work with Dr. Billy Graham
oh
and
wow.
other big names. So he's worked with a lot of big name people. So I ended up working for him, and I sort of still work with him to this day. He's 85. He doesn't get out as
Wow.
much, but I'm still sort of part of his team. So yeah, so I'm
How do
out
you
here
how do
fortunate.
you find that the people over there where you are in Israel, how are they as far as receiving you there? I mean, how do they treat you? And how do you have a lot of friends? You know, that type of thing.
I think the Palestinian side, um, what's the word? I don't want to say respects me better, but receives me better. And I think partly because they have a story to tell and they feel that they've been mistreated. So they want you to be their friends. They don't necessarily like the
Yeah,
British very much because they blame the British for a lot of things that have happened to them.
yeah,
But the Israeli side, not as much, but they're, it's a first world country and it's setting up. Whereas in Bethlehem, you're in more like a third world country where there's struggles and unemployment. So people like the West, and there's a lot of projects set up here in Israel, in Bethlehem, NGO organizations, charity organizations helping, basically because the Palestinian Authority is corrupt. So
yeah.
people don't get the money, they don't get the wage. So I'm living in Bethlehem in a cheaper rental accommodation, going to the supermarket, things are cheaper. And then just a few kilometers away, you're going into Israel and it's more first world you know. So here in Bethlehem, I get into a car, and my friend gets offended because I'm putting the seatbelt on because he thinks I'm saying that he's a bad driver. You know,
Oh,
and you can get away with things. You have young guys driving on motorcycles without crash helmets on and things like this. We're like
yeah,
30 or 40 years behind everybody else.
yeah,
And then there is a bit of corruption, and where if you go into Israel, you'll never get away with that. You know,
yeah, yeah. You
you can get
say
away.
that it reminds me, the seatbelt thing reminds me of when I was learning how to drive in driver's ed. Um, it 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 wasn't they didn't wear seatbelts then. I
Yeah,
mean, we
yeah,
had them, of course, but they didn't. When you were little, this was your seatbelt, was your your parents, holding you
yeah,
back with their arm if they were stopping suddenly. But whenever I would get up, I was the one with the least amount of driving experience, and everybody say, "Oh, the rookie's up," and then they put their seatbelts on.
yeah.
So I would always prompt them to put their seatbelts on. So, is there any kind of encouragement or any kind of words of wisdom that you have for people who are wanting to write poetry and perhaps not as well versed at it or just kind of starting, as far as what would you kind of advice would you give them to start writing poetry or
I
and
think
to
you
write it maybe better than they are?
I think you just need to get in and do it, and then think about your subject, and then think about the everything to do with that subject. So write some little notes about everything to do with that subject because that will help you to get the rhyme and the poem together. But just get out there and do it, and do the best you can.
Yeah.
And
Do
as
you
long as
write
you're
any? Do you write more factual or more fiction when you do write?
A lot of things are based on maybe something that's happened to me.
Hmm.
So the poem itself may not be factual, but it may have actually happened to me. But it may not have actually happened in the way that I've written it in the poem.
Okay.
Uh, so if I write about my bad back, I might be writing something like, I've been to the doctor. Well, maybe I haven't. These sort of things. So they're based on true stories. A lot of them. Then some poems I like to write. I like to write poems about historic events. So I wrote a poem about Henry VIII and his six wives. I thought that would be a nice one to write. So the challenge of that and looking at it all, putting it all together. So I've done that, and there are other historic events like the JFK one that we just wrote.
Yeah.
Uh, I like
So
to write
does
the
that
stories.
cause you to have to do some research sometimes when you are writing, since you're doing
Yes,
kind of
because
historical stuff?
the historical things need to be correct. I had one
Okay.
guy, is this true? Yeah, 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 this is true. This is what actually happened. So if you can get a little bit of comedy in it as well, it's good, but not everything is comedy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so poems about what I'm going through in life, poems about, historical events, maybe a spiritual side. That's what we like to write about. So yeah.
Very good. Um, so you have come across Aladdin's lamp, and the genie is granting you three wishes. What are you going to wish for? Anything in the world. Doesn't this does not have to be literary? It doesn't have to be poetic. You can have whatever you want. Three things.
I don't know. I don't know. Um, I think I'd wish to be a better person. I think being a better person would be very good for me and possibly for other people as well. Um, I'd like to see a lot of my material do better when, I do a lot of work blogging things out on different pages and things. And at the moment, I've got a block on Facebook, so I don't know how much people can see from my Facebook page because Facebook is restricting me. Crazy Facebook. I
Yeah.
love Facebook, but I hate it sometimes.
Yeah,
My
if you, if
latest,
you if you post too many things too rapidly, they shut you off. Or
well,
I always call it Facebook jail. There's a lot of
well,
poets that have been in Facebook jail.
a lot of my stuff that I've got into trouble over is they say that it's fake news. Well, they're punishing me for somebody else's bad journalism. And just the other day, I got punished for a photograph that I put on Facebook, and it's obviously a joke. Everyone can see that it's a joke, but they've taken it seriously. So it was a picture of Prince Harry and his book, and it was put up about a month ago, which was before the publishing date, and it's in the pound shop. Well, I thought that was funny that they put Prince Harry's book in the pound shop.
Yeah.
Now it only just came out this week, but I put that on my Facebook page last month, and they've punished me for it. They've put it as fake news. Well, I know it's fake news. I know it's not real, and everyone can tell that it was a joke.
Right.
Yet they've
Right.
punished me for it, so I'm being restricted. So
Yeah, they're really,
it just seems
Facebook is
stupid.
very funny, and that's why we are very careful. If you ever get anything rejected by us, it's usually because it's something that. So we have really strict rules when we go and approve people's stuff,
Yeah,
because Facebook comes back to us and they'll warn us and say, "Hey, we can shut you down if you aren't more
yeah,
careful." And this last week, there was two things that they came up with. Facebook came up with that happened a year. One was a year ago, and one
yeah,
was
yeah,
2 years ago that it was posted. And I was like thinking, so why weren't we? But most of the time, when they alert you, they don't even let you know what it is. They just say it was offensive, goes against our standards, and they remove it, and you have no idea what they objected to.
Well,
So
I'm a conservative, so they object to everything that I put, basically. I'm a conservative.
so you probably have more rejections than you do approvals, I suppose.
Well, there's certain website now, as I sort of think, I have to be a little bit more careful. If I can find the same story from another source, it's maybe better because I know that they're very much against this website. So I'm very, very careful. Yeah. So I'm going to have to be
Yeah.
careful because my latest poem that I blogged out, the figures aren't very good for it. And I think it's because people maybe aren't seeing it. So I'm not really sure.
How long do they? How long are you in Facebook jail this time?
They say up to 90 days, which is 3 months
That's a long time. Oh
of
goodness.
moving my news feeds lower.
Ah,
So people are seeing it. So, but
I had somebody, one of the poets who had, I think it was over something that maybe showed some partial nudity or some too much skin or whatever, and
Yeah.
he was blocked for a whole year. They blocked him.
Wow. Well, I had a Facebook page about Israel, and I was getting 29 to 30,000 engagements a week.
Wow, that's
And then
huge.
then because I had a second account, they realized I had a second account, and I'd done something with the second account because I had a violation, and they shut me down, and it's never recovered. I get maybe like 200 a week because Facebook just damaged it. They destroyed my page. So I'm sort of a
I
very much
think
like,
you're like a hardcore Facebook criminal then, aren't you?
yeah,
And I mean, I kind of laugh at it sometimes because it just I don't know it's kind of funny in a way, but I mean it is a good means. You think that somebody like you that this happened to a few times would just be so put off and just forget about Facebook. I'm never going back.
but
But
on the other hand, Facebook is fantastic for blogging things out, going into the groups like the poetry groups and things like that,
yeah,
putting a poem. I have a lot of poems. I joined a lot of groups and I get a lot rejected because they don't like a video or they don't, things like that. Um, but it's been great just for people just to be connect, and then people are writing little comments, and that's encouraging. That say, "Oh, we love your stuff. You're awesome," and things like that, and that's
yeah,
encouraging. And then other groups,
yeah,
they give you a certificate, if you're the poet of the week or poet of the month. And that's
yeah,
really encouraging. It's like, wow, that's so nice that, out of all these thousands of people that poem, that you won something, and that you got something. So that's encouraging as well. So Facebook's
yeah,
been very, very good in that way. I'm also in other groups now because some of my poems that I've written over 3 years ago, I'm blogging them out in other groups every day just to get my figures up, just to to let more and
yeah,
more people know where you're at. So I opened a Twitter account, I reopened a Parler account and things like that, and just so every
yeah,
night I sit there for half an hour just clicking like on things so that I'm interacting with all these different social media sites, so that hopefully
yeah.
people will see my stuff on those pages as well.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen anything of yours I didn't like. I mean, everything I've ever seen of yours, I've really thought, gosh, she's good. And I
Yeah.
think it helps, of course, you're doing those videos and you're reciting them. And uh, so I know that on your site that you have these and I think I asked you about it before and I've forgotten. So forgive me. This is what you do at 60. So I want you to let me know what the little shots are that you take, like with the stuffed animals.
I love animals and I feel like I'm a big kid. So I have a giant Scooby Doo, and I bought it for my work, but really, he just he just sits here.
Yeah,
And I speak to kids in schools. So some of the things have been used for that. So I've got some puppet things, and then just in general, when you want to do something on Facebook, every Christmas I do a photograph of me and Scooby Doo for
yeah.
Christmas because I like Scooby Doo. So it's just having a little bit of fun, really. Uh,
I
you
would
can't
say
always
that's
take yourself
a
too.
endearing quality about men is that many of them retain that little boyishness in them, and I
Yeah.
think it's refreshing for them to have that little boyishness still in them. So I
Well,
like that a lot.
even when I'm writing a poetry, I do a special poem for Christmas, and
Mhm.
it's a little bit longer poem, and so I always do a poem about a cat. you know. So one year was about a cat who went to go and get a Christmas tree. Another year is about a cat who went outside and saw this other cat under the car, and that's where he lived in a beautiful house, and he was going to get his tin of salmon, and this little cat got nothing. So he invited him out. Then this year I done one about a pudding where the cat swallowed a sixpence, and
Oh,
I've always liked like the Walt Disney romance, the romance of Walt Disney. So that's what I try to do at Christmas, is try to do a special Christmas story
right.
that's in the line and the romance of Walt Disney, just for a bit of fun. And so we've
Yeah.
done about three of them so far.
You were talking about your cat earlier that opens the fridge, and I'm envisioning in my head, you're asleep, and the cat goes in. Hey guys, come on, follow me, and goes in there and opens the refrigerator, and they just feast on your chicken or whatever you have in
I,
there.
I have actually ran outside in the garden, chasing after my cat, trying to get a piece of chicken back.
So funny. Now that I don't know if you've written about that, but that's a great one to
I
write
haven't
about.
quite written that one, but I've had barbecues at the house, and I've had to really make sure that the door is absolutely locked through because my friends come for a barbecue, and if I've got a lot of meat in the fridge. But yeah, she's a little pain. She's a little pest sometimes.
What's her
Uh,
name? What's her
uh,
name?
I don't actually have a name for her, but I call. There's two things. I call her Your Majesty, Her Majesty. Then I call her Promise as well, because she has a
Promise?
blue eye. She has one blue eye, and I was praying in my garden one day, and I just suddenly felt, "Oh, you're going to have a cat with a blue eye." And I looked at all my kittens, and there wasn't a blue eye there. And I thought, oh. So then, not long afterwards, my black cat got pregnant and had a white kitten, and that white kitten had a blue eye. Now I didn't feel it was blue eyes; I just felt it was a blue eye. And then, of
So
course,
just one
after,
eye is blue.
yeah, one of her eyes is blue. So I
And
sort of
that
call her
and
Promise.
that is the little the sneaky one. Is
Yes,
the
that's the one that keeps getting into my fridge. Yeah.
yeah.
So she's a
Well,
naughty girl
that
sometimes.
blue eye might mean something. She's got,
Yeah.
I don't know. That is funny though that you thought of that
Yeah.
before it happened. Are you intuitive that way? Do you do that very often in
Not
life?
very often, but the whole reason why I'm here is because that sort of happened. So I was living in Canada, and then I came over to Israel to do a work project, and I'd been offered a job. So I was praying, God, where do you want me to be? Because do I go for another job or whatever? And I was at St. Paul's Church in Jerusalem, and I was just praying, and I felt deep, deep in my heart the words, "Come build the walls of Jerusalem." That's what sort of dropped in my heart, and I'm like, oh, was that God speaking to me? What was that? I didn't know. And then 2 weeks later, we decided to go to a museum in Jerusalem. And we're walking through the Tower of David Museum at Jaffa Gate in Jerusalem. And as I was walking around, there was a sign on the wall and it said, "Come build the walls of Jerusalem." So I left.
Wow.
I went back to Canada. I said, I'm leaving. And it is a verse in the Bible, but I didn't know that. So I went back to Canada, told them I'm leaving. So I left Canada, went back to the UK. I had a thyroid problem. I was having problems sleeping and everything, so I had to go and get tested. So that was 2001. So I couldn't come to Israel in 2001. So I came in 2002, right in the middle of the second Intifada, the uprising. So if you remember, Ariel Sharon went on the Temple Mount, and that's when all the trouble started. So when I was there was bombs going. I think there was about 3 or 4 bombs went off in one day. So there was bombs going off in Jerusalem, just round the corner from where I was living. A bomb went off in Mea Sharim, very close to where I live. A bomb went off. I saw a bomb. I saw a bus blown out by a bomb. The very first time that I came to Israel, the first 2 weeks, there was 2 bombs went off, and I heard one of them, and I went down and saw everything. Um,
So did you
so
start to second guess yourself then at that point? Did you think, oh no, this might
no,
not
well,
be a good idea?
if I'm honest, I like the excitement. So you may
Are you
run
an
away.
adrenaline? Are you an adrenaline junkie?
Yeah, you may run away when something happens. I will be running in the other direction. I will be going to it. And that's not actually very good because many times if a bomb goes off here in Jerusalem, then the ambulances and everybody gets there for rescue. There is a second bomb there and it blows up when the ambulance and the people are there. So it actually isn't a good idea to be running towards a problem, a situation,
Yeah.
because there can be very often a second bomb. But
Yeah.
so all this was going on and taking place and happening when I first came to Israel full time. I'd been before, but when I came full time, all these things were happening, and then it sort of quietened down a little bit. But there's always something happening. They built the wall, and then, of course, when they built the wall, the situation changed. They went into diggers and started hitting people with diggers, and then when that didn't work, they would do stabbing, so that they go around stabbing people. Um, so there's always something. There's something happened today. I think this morning there was some shooting went on. Some people drove by in a car shooting at some soldiers or something. So there's always something. So you always have the potential for something. So a few weeks ago, there was a bomb went off in Jerusalem. The next day or two, I was in Jerusalem. So you're always just that little bit of aware. And I was walking past and I
Yeah.
saw a suitcase on the side of the road. So I just went down and I saw a security for a building because I was next to a very important building. I said, "Oh, there's a suitcase just up here. It doesn't look as though it should be there." So I reported it and then left. But that's what it's like all the time. You never know when something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's kind of scary, but you're kind of living on the edge a little bit as
Well,
far
people think
as
that I'm actually dangerous living in Bethlehem, but Bethlehem's actually more safer than living in Jerusalem
oh, oh,
because I'm
oh,
living amongst Palestinians. They're not going to. Well, things do happen here. The Israeli soldiers come in. I've been tear gassed 2 or 3 times here in Bethlehem,
oh,
but that's because I've gone to see what's been going on. Because there's a certain area where there's always trouble, so you know when there's going to be trouble. Um, right at Rachel's tomb, Friday, 1 o'clock, when the mosques are emptying. When there is a situation, maybe Israel's bombing Gaza or something like that. So you know that's going to cause a provocation, and you know that's going to cause trouble. So that's when I sort of go to see, and got myself tear gassed, which is very very difficult.
wow. So
But I like to
when
take
you do
photographs.
your journalism type thing and you like interview people or do that kind of thing, um, so where is that being like broadcast, or who does that broadcast through? Is that something you do personally or someone?
I send it to about 10, 12 different Christian radio stations.
No.
So most of them are in the UK. I think we've got one of them in America. I've got one in South Africa. So I just send them out and people play them. And yeah, so that's been really good. I also have them written up as articles as well. So the Jerusalem Report here in Jerusalem has taken a few of my things. Also, All Israel News, All Arab News, they've taken a few different stories. Not a
So
lot, but one or two.
do you ever have any repercussions from that, as far as does anyone ever threaten you there or say you can't write that? I mean, because I don't imagine maybe there's the freedom like of speech and like we have in the United States and other places as far as writing and so forth.
You've got to be careful with your opinion. And also, as well, some Palestinians don't agree with normalization. So I have been to one organization and they wouldn't give me an interview because they interview Israelis, which seems a little bit stupid. So, in other words, your Palestinian cause isn't going to go out because they interviewed Israel. So I'll just go to an Israeli and get an interview with them. It doesn't make any sense. So
Right.
some people don't like normalization. Some people do normalization. They have to keep it a little bit of a secret
Yeah.
because they can get into trouble over it. Um, so yeah, so yeah, you have to be a little bit careful. I have my own personal opinions, who my close friends know what I believe.
Yeah.
Some people you've got to be a little bit more careful. I sometimes like to question people. They'll say, "Oh, this has happened and that's happened." Well, why did it happen? Oh, a child has been killed in Bethlehem. Well, why was he killed in Bethlehem? Oh, I don't know. The Israeli army killed, but why? They don't just kill someone. So why did? And I ask a lot of questions. Why did they kill him? And then maybe you'll find out. Well, he actually had a gun and he was shooting at the soldiers or throwing stones at the soldiers, or he had a Molotov cocktail and he was. So that's the reason why he wasn't just walking down the street and he was shot. He was involved in something. So I like to ask people, but why? You
Yeah.
telling me, oh, this is bad from Israel. Okay, but why? Why did it happen? I want to know why it happened. So I like to pull out of people. And if they can't answer me, say, well, how can you say it's bad? How can you say that's bad of Israel? That
Yeah.
because we'd do exactly the same in England. If I was walking down the street and the police shot me, that would be a terrible thing. But if I was walking down the street with a gun, threatening people, it means a totally different story. And a lot
Yeah.
of people don't learn to think. They take their indoctrination. So we had a journalist that was killed just recently, and pretty much straight away, Israel done it. Oh, Israel's killed him. Well, hang on a second. It's only just happened. You can't say that. There was a gun battle. There was two people shooting each other. You can't just say Israel shot her. You have to wait and see because they have no, no, and they wouldn't, they just oh Israel's done this, and sometimes they send out the indoctrination before they actually think about. Well, actually, there was two people fighting. There was both
Mhm.
people shooting, so maybe it was something else, but it's not necessarily always about truth. It's about getting your narrative out. And I see that a lot here. People wanting to get their own narrative out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I suppose you kind of have your own connections and guess you probably have. I mean, I guess you have your own like set of people that like trust you and know you, and where that might be more beneficial since you've been doing this for a while. There is that. Would that be the
Well,
case?
I have quite a lot of contacts of certain people that I can come back to again and again on different stories and subjects. So if there was something happening politically, I could go to that person. I've been into the Knesset and I've interviewed a few people in the Knesset. So I have a friend who I'd go and say, can we do an interview about this or about that?
Right.
I have friends who I'll interview about Jewish holidays, because
Right.
they're maybe Orthodox Jew or maybe some are Messianic Jew, and I want to get from an Orthodox point of view and a Messianic point of view as well. So there's things like that, and then I'm always looking for brand new interviews as well. So that's where Facebook really has been a godsend. We've just moaned and complained about it, but on the other hand, it has been a godsend because I see all these different charities and different organizations,
Yeah.
and so we'll do the interview if it's Arabic. We'll do the interview in English. Then I will do the interview in Arabic. So I will ask the questions in English, and they will answer in Arabic because we have a radio station here in Bethlehem. And so then I take my voice out, and my friend Elias comes and puts his voice in. I do all the work, and he gets all the credit. So we do a show every. It's supposed to be every week, but it actually doesn't at the moment. Um, just so sometimes we're doing interviews in English and in Arabic as well. So it's quite a challenge when I don't speak Arabic. So, but it makes great shows. So yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you share another one of your works with us?
Well, I got a poem here, and it's called Agatha Christie because I love Agatha Christie. One of my favorite writers is Agatha Christie. I like to buy a lot of murder mysteries and watch them on the television. So I have a huge collection of all kinds of different murder mysteries. And I actually met David Suchet, who plays Poirot in Bethlehem. And I got an opportunity to do a little bit of a radio interview with him. So I wrote a poem about Agatha Christie. This is it. A murder has been committed, a body lies dead, and so many questions are going round in my head. It's a murder mystery that would make Agatha Christie proud. With Poirot to the rescue, he's not brash or loud. His little grey cells get to work looking for a clue, interviewing suspects, finding out who is who. Will the plot be the same as Murder on the Orient Express? Will there be another victim filled with fear and distress? Or will it be another Death on the Nile? I'm filling up with suspense. Poirot knows what's what. He's gathered the evidence. Everyone is in the same room, and the red herrings are worked out. I know who the murderer is, Poirot begins to shout. We all wait in anticipation. Come on, give us a clue. And Poirot declares, then and there, the murderer is you.
Love it. Love it. Love that. And love that you wrote about, Agatha Christie, and that's wonderful. I did one once. There was a Jane Austen anthology, and I submitted three things which were published, but one of them was "I'm in love with Mr. Darcy," and it
Yeah.
actually was
Well,
rather humorous. But and then at the end it says, "I'm still in love with Mr. Darcy." So I'm sure. Are you probably familiar with? Are you familiar with Jane Austen and Pride and Prejudice? And
I'm familiar with them, but I haven't watched them. And
oh, okay.
they are something that I would like to actually get into because they're very period dramas that BBC have done.
Yeah.
So at some point, I probably will buy some of those period dramas and like to watch because I like some of the classic literature. Charles
Yeah.
Dickens and Agatha Christie and C.S. Lewis. They are some of my favorites. So yeah, yeah. So I like all
And
that
they've
sort of
done
stuff.
the Pride and Prejudice a few times, of course. But my favorite one is the one that has Colin Firth in it. I love that one. But anyway,
Yeah,
it's a great one. I don't know. Jill says, "Wow, I love the ESP end." So I guess she was talking about your intuitiveness there.
yeah,
And then Jill also says, "Loving this, you are both naturals." Wonder what
well,
we're natural at.
well. Normally, I'm doing the interviewing, so
I know. How does that feel? How does it feel to be on the other side?
It's a little bit different, but it's actually very, very comfortable. But
Yeah,
if you know what you're talking about, it's not too bad. But if you don't know what you're talking about, you're busy panicking, thinking, "Oh my goodness, what am I going to say?"
yeah,
But I've been interviewed quite a number of times. Every so often,
yeah.
Premier Christian Radio will call me up about a situation that's happening here. BBC local radio will often call me up, and I so quickly find out what about the subject, and I need to know what I'm talking about. That something's happened, and I want to know what's happening. I've got to quickly find out, and I don't always know the answer. So, but when you're
Okay.
asking me about what I'm writing, I know the answers to all of that, so it makes it more comfortable. So,
Yeah, and I didn't give you any kind of script or what I was gonna say, so but I like the spontaneity of it. Do you interview that way? Just very spontaneously, I would imagine.
I prepare everything. I have every single question written because I can't
Wow.
come in and just do an interview without a piece of paper. I need to have at least a list of questions. And
Yeah.
then when I'm doing the interview, I think of other questions. And if I don't have a pen and write it down, I have to keep it in my head and keep it in my head, keep thinking. So I'm not listening to the interview. I'm remembering the question that's in my
Oh,
head, until I can get the chance to
yeah.
ask it. Because if I don't, within a second, it will be gone and I've lost it.
Yeah.
So
So it sounds like you're much more organized than I. I used to have a list of questions, and I don't even do that anymore. I just kind of fly off the cuff. So
yeah.
you can critique that later. It could be a total disaster.
It depends whether you've got the character and the personality to do it, and you seem to have the character and personality, and you're not sort of stuttering thinking of a question. Where for me, I would be, "What's the next question?" And I've got like a certain amount of time before I can think of the next question before they stop, and that's where I would panic. So I like to, and again, go to the website of whoever I'm interviewing and just look and see what their website says, and just ask them questions from the website. And
Yeah.
then while I'm doing the interview, I might think of a new, depending how they've answered something, oh, that gives me a question. I never thought about that. So I'll try and write it down with my left hand, which is really bad if I can. But
Has there ever
um,
been a moment where you've been kind of stupefied? You've been interviewing and that you don't expect an answer or a response, and then you just kind of, what do I do now?
I'd done an interview with a member of the Knesset, and I had based my questions more on a sort of a religious side, and
Mhm.
he wasn't religious,
Oh,
and he basically he didn't really like it and didn't really know where I was coming from. He didn't understand where I was coming from. So I had
yeah.
to very, very quickly change tact and change course, and survive and save the interview. Um,
So you kind of were ad libbing a little bit, weren't you?
I,
Kind of had
I
to
was
ad
sort of
lib.
ad living a little bit, and we went down. I think because I've been here for so long, you can very easily ask some questions. Like if you don't know what time, oh, well, talk about Iran. Let's talk about Iran. The difficulties that Iran are a threat and a danger to Israel. Go down that path.
Yeah,
What's the what anti-Semitism is anti-Semitism real around the world today. So there's certain things that you can jump on if you have a panic mode.
yeah,
But yeah, yeah. And then I interviewed a guy. He produced a CD. He was a rapper and produced a CD. So I would ask him questions like, "So you've made a CD? Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
oh,
Uh,
oh.
you,
So
you know, you know,
he's not elaborating over everything.
yeah.
It's just like yes,
Do you like
no.
to rap? Yes. And it was like pulling teeth. And you would think because he was a rapper and a singer, he'd have a lot to say, but he didn't. So, and some
Yeah,
people just make absolutely fantastic interviews. Some people are very professional at it. Particularly, I've interviewed Palestinian Media Watch, looking at what the Palestinians are putting in the news. Well, they have a set agenda. They know what they're talking about. So you can have a fantastic interview about that. Pay to slay and all these sort of things. Where other people you go and they don't really know what they're talking about, or sometimes maybe someone isn't actually really very good in the English language.
right.
So I went to a new center that had just opened, and I think he was Italian, and the interview wasn't very good. We done about a 10-minute interview, but it just wasn't very good because
Yeah,
he didn't really know what he was talking about. So sometimes you can have a really, really good interview. Sometimes it's a little bit rubbish. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's a little. Yeah, I understand that. So
doesn't go anywhere.
is there's can you think of one person that you've interviewed that stands out amongst the many that you've done?
Um, I this one, I interviewed Oliver North, Colonel Oliver North, who
Yeah.
was on Ronald Reagan's administration, and I went to him. I was invited to a meal, and he was there. Didn't know he was going to be there, so he spoke, and then he left. And I thought, I'm just going to go outside and see if I can get an interview with him. And I done and I hadn't prepared anything. Didn't Yeah, obviously I know him, but I don't know anything about him.
Right.
And I went just to ask him a few questions. And what struck me was, he gave me 2 or 3 minutes of his time, and that's what struck me. And to him it meant nothing, but to me it meant everything. And that's always struck me, that sometimes we can give time to people and it means nothing to you, but it means
Yeah.
absolutely everything to someone else. And I have the same
Exactly.
issue. Every week I visit a blind lady. She's 70-year-old, she's blind, and nobody comes to see her. And me going to visit her is the highlight of her week. And it seems so weird to think that just me going to see someone is the highlight of someone else's week, but it's actually true. It's actually sad in one sense, but it's actually true. And I just give an hour of my time. Like I do it twice a week, so it's like 2 hours. But it means so much to somebody else to go and give that time and spend that time with someone else.
I'm
And it's
glad that you
something,
shared that with me because that opens up a whole nother side of you as far as your kindness and caring and compassionate side, and that you do that because that's big. An
yeah,
hour twice a week, and
yeah.
to somebody who can't see, I'm sure that is huge. And how long have you been doing that?
I've been doing it about 17 or 18 years. So yeah,
Wow,
so yeah, I
that's
built a lot of,
amazing. So
I built a,
you're family now. I mean, at this point, you're
yeah,
just
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I built a lot of connections with people, so I do a lot of visitation and things with people as well. A lot of people at the church just aren't doing visitation, so I do that. I had a friend, my friend Nabil, and I would go and visit him. He was 13 from a very poor family and a rebel, bit of very much a rebel, doing his own thing, and got to know him. Became like my best friend, and
Wow.
helped him with doing some glass engraving at first, and that would make a bit of money for his family. But he has a very stupid family, very, very, very bad family. They always make the wrong decisions, stupid decisions, and all the family members do it. The Bill went to England. He came to me for Christmas in England. He came on me on missions trips, and when he was 24, he committed suicide, and it was a very, very, very
Tragic.
hard time.
Yeah.
So
So,
that
I always, I don't know about you, but I'm very much a people builder. So I always like to, you talk about the suicide person. I'm doing psych right now as far as a job. And so it's very important for me to let people know that they have value and that they have
yeah,
worth.
yeah,
And so, you know, so what do you think? Because I kind of think, life is this journey. You were talking about earlier, as far as one of the things that you would like, as far as your wishes, was to become a better person. And I feel like, life is this journey where we learn to become better people along the way. Nobody ever reaches perfection, of course. Um, and I think that, you're talking about becoming a better person, that we also try to do that because we have to live with us
yeah.
24/7 for the rest of our lives, right? And so it's part of that journey. But so, having said that, um, if someone was to describe what you are like, what Paul's like, how do you think, or how would you or they describe you as far as a person? What would they say?
I think I come across a lot younger than I am because I like to have a lot of fun. I don't like hanging around people my own age. So all my friends, my best friend is 24.
Wow.
And we hang, I'll say, oh, let's go out and have something to eat, and so when the Bill was alive, he was just young and I was, so much older. I don't like people my age because, I like to have a bit of fun, a fun time,
Yeah.
and hang around with people. So I'm a fun person. I like to be caring. Um, I don't like conflict, but I do like to say to people, look, you've got to be careful here. So again, it's been like a father figure. I'm single, so with my best friend Elias, I'm trying to be a father figure with him. He came to me a few months ago saying, "I've got this business proposition. What do you think?" I said, "No." don't go that way because that's a pyramid scheme. And
Oh
he didn't,
yeah.
you know, he didn't know that. So trying to give good advice and right advice. Um, I think really at the end of the day, we don't know our own hearts, um, because we don't know what we'd do in a certain situation. If we were in a certain situation, we would maybe act in a different way because we don't know how we would react. So we don't really know what our heart is like. If you've accidentally killed somebody, would you hide it? And if you hide it, you have to do all these lies to hide and hide and hide. Well, you can't say what you would do until you're actually in that situation yourself. If you know you're going to get into a huge amount of trouble. Um, so I think sort of our hearts can be evil and wicked, but we don't actually know it until we get into that situation. And many of us don't get into a situation, thankfully. But if we
Yeah.
did get into a situation, then how would we react to that? We'd probably want to hide things and lie and cheat and do all these things, you know.
Right.
So
It's
yeah,
true. We don't know how we react in given situations. So,
yeah, yeah.
it's been really lovely talking to you. Our time's up. We kind of went over a bit, so you may be the second longest pop
Oh
chat.
wow. Yeah,
Um, so Zan Johns has you beat, but it's been very interesting. Actually, I could go another hour probably,
yeah.
and really be very comfortable with it. But it's been a pleasure, and I certainly thank you for your time and everything that you've shared with us, and so we can get to know a little bit more about you. And I encourage others to look up your work and look at your videos because they're really rather remarkable. Send me a few links later. I'd like to see a few more myself. But
Great.
do you have anything else you'd like to say to anybody before we leave?
Well, just thank you to you for allowing me to come on and just share. It's been a great time, a great experience,
Oh,
and just people keep writing and follow your dreams. I think following your dreams is very, very important. If
yeah,
you need to have a dream. You need to have a vision and a focus and a vision for 2023. And if you want to write more, then just do it. Find that everyone has time. It's about
yeah,
priority, you know. Um, I say, oh, I don't have time, but the reality is, I come home at night and watch TV. Well, that's my priority. I have the time. It's my priority, and a lot of us do have time. It depends what priority we put on things. I think
yeah,
sometimes we need to, if you want to write, to just put some priority time. Give up something for a little time just to be able to develop. And once I've got like maybe 150, 200, 150 videos on my site now.
wow,
Suddenly I've got a great load, and it's over 3 years. You do one a week, and then suddenly you've got 52. Then the next minute you've got 104, and the next minute you've got 156. You got just they build and they build. Just keep being faithful and doing it, and then they will build and build. And I'm hoping to write a book with mine. But I never started off wanting to write a book, but I've got enough material now. I could go through it all.
yeah,
So that wasn't the beginning, but the end game could be that I write a book. So just be faithful with that
yeah.
little.
And
Yeah.
I think you should do that. I think you should share your works with the world. So I think that that would be wonderful if you did that. So all
Yeah.
of those hundred and whatever videos are poetry videos that you've done, because that's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at you. You're prolific.
Yeah. One a week. Well, sometimes I write more than one a week, but in general, I like to do one a week, and then I try to load one a week as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
Do you have
Yeah.
one? Do you have one video that is your favorite?
Um, I don't know. I'd have to go through them all and have a look. Some of them I've even forgot I've done the subject. I've got a few political ones as well, American political ones. There's one that I like, uh, this video isn't about Hillary Clinton because I might get shot. Because everyone who seems to have something negative against Hillary
They
Clinton
they
seems
disappear, right?
they
They come
disappear or they
after them.
die or commit suicide. So I've got a video. This isn't about Hillary Clinton. Without a doubt, this is not about Hillary Clinton because I don't want to
Right.
get shot.
Right.
So I
I
wrote
had
a poem about that. So
I
I
had a
like the
friend who
comedy of that.
Yeah, I had a friend who husband was in the military in the army, and his last detail that he had was providing transportation to the White House. And
Well,
Clinton was in office then, and Hillary was not liked amongst anyone who provided the transportation. I guess she was always very, very rude and
Yeah.
not so nice to them. Although Bill, I guess, was nice, but yeah, Hillary was not exactly.
Yeah.
Now that I've said that, something might happen to me. Who knows? So you know,
Yeah.
I'll just
We might not see
take
you
the
next week.
risk, huh? But yeah, I'll take the risk. If something
Yeah.
happens to me tomorrow, you'll know what it is. It's the
Yeah.
Hillary factor. They probably call it something,
Yeah.
but it's really so lovely to have you. And uh, you got so many stories. We could probably do two or three interviews with you because you just have, you have a lot to say. So, and
I
hopefully,
have a lot of stories with living here in the
I
Holy Land.
bet
So
you
a lot of stories
do.
with living here in the Holy Land. So, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and yeah,
Another time,
but
another time.
yeah, we'll have you back on later. We'll come up with some stuff. All kind of off the cuff stuff. I don't know what. Let's see. Jill's talking again. Wow, I love the ESP. No, we already did that. She said tee hee hee pulling teeth. What was that in reference to?
That was the video doing the interview with the guy that didn't answer my questions. Oh yes,
Oh, oh,
no,
oh, oh,
yes,
oh. Gotcha. You know what?
yes,
That I think that was
yeah,
just British thought. You're able to follow her because she's a Brit. I'm just kidding, of course. I love Jill.
yeah,
Thank you both for this pleasure. Love you, Jill. So love and blessings to everyone. Thank you, Paul. It's been a true pleasure,
yeah,
and stay safe over there
yes,
so you can continue to do what you do. But
yeah.
and
God
it's
bless. Bye bye.
graciousness with your poetry.
Okay, okay. Bye bye.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.